process that will now be available to the 21 senators whose expenses are being questioned by the Auditor General. Evan Dyer explains.
What's going on in the Senate right now is quite important because, of course, it plays directly into Duffy's defense. Duffy is basically claiming that he's been singled out unfairly. That what he did was not uncommon in the Senate, that other people played by the same rules. And therefore, when we see more and more senators being dragged into this expense scandal, this does indeed appear to help him somewhat. Process we're dealing with senators, it appears to be considerably more lenient than the process that Duffy went through, as well as senators such as Brazo, Pat Brazo, Pamela Wallin. And of course, as Chris all reported yesterday, this new more lenient process was designed by senators who now themselves appear on the list of potentially delinquent senators. In other words, the people who have expense problems are the ones who designed the new process to deal with expense problems. And so that does appear to suggest that Duffy was treated differently with a much harsher standard.
That's the CBC's Evan Dyer in Ottawa. Latest progress in one of the many cases of misdemeanor murder in native women has to do with the identification of a woman who vanished 3 years ago. When her body turned up in the Red River that year, her family asked police to run a DNA test. But police at the time said witnesses came forward to say she was still alive. Today, police said those witnesses were mistaken. Winnipeg Police Superintendent Danny Smythe issued a statement.
This past week, the female has been positively identified as Audrey Desjardins, who is 52 years old. We know that Audrey Desjardins was never reported missing.
The CBC reported on this story last April. Reporter Donna Carrero says the family did in fact try to report Audrey Desjardins missing, but were told by police that she'd been seen inside Winnipeg. The good news today from the Canadian job market. The May employment report has been released, and it shows 58,000 new jobs were added to the economy last month. Half those positions are full-time. This is a strong rebound from April when we saw a net loss of more than 19,000 jobs. As for the unemployment rate, it is holding steady at 6.8%, where it's been for the past 4 months. Prime Minister Harper is on his way to Kiev for a meeting with Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko. It's a brief stopover for the Prime Minister as he makes his way to Germany to the G7 summit. This is ABC's Terry Malevsky.
The G7 will, of course, be focused principally on security, and Ukraine, again, will be at the top of the list, as well as the fight against Islamic State. There is one problem developing at the G7, though, for Mr. Harper. That's on the subject of climate change, where most of the other leaders there seem ready to endorse a program of, and I quote, decarbonization, the D word. Decarbonization meaning an end to the use of fossil fuels. So far, Canada and Japan are the only holdouts. They don't want to see that D word in the summit communique. After that, Harper moves on to a couple of trips which should be easier going. In Poland, again, to reinforce his opposition to Russian aggression, notably in the Baltic, and then on to Rome for a prize photo op with the Pope.
That's the CBC's Terry Malevsky. Tariq Aziz, one of Saddam Hussein's senior advisors, has died in a prison hospital in Iraq during the first Gulf War and the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. Tariq Aziz served as Saddam's foreign minister. After the fall of Baghdad, Aziz surrendered to U.S. troops. An Iraqi court sentenced him to death in 2010, but he was never executed. Tariq Aziz was 79. That's the CBC News.
New to CBC Radio 2 this fall. The enduring masterpieces of classical music take center stage with Catherine Duncan. From Brahms Symphony No. 1 to the Ravel's Piano Concerto in G major. Experience the great works of the classical world performed in their entirety. Center stage, Saturday afternoon, 1 p.m. Atlantic, 1:30 in Newfoundland on CBC Radio 2. CBC Music, Canada's free online music service with over 50 web radio stations. Saxophonist, pianist, composer, producer, teacher, a musical legend creates a supremely Canadian jazz experience. Phil Dwyer's Jazz Canada on your computer and on your iPhone, iPad, BlackBerry 10, and on your Android device. Visit cbcmusic.ca and connect with the music you love. You're listening to the best in classical music. Tempo with Julie Nazrala on CBC Radio 2.
Happy Friday, Lantar, and welcome to the program if you're just tuning in. When Dvorak was just 34 years old, he was still a small fish in a big pond. He was working like a fiend, so Dvorak applied for a grant and got it. You can imagine the kind of relief and reassurance Dvorak must have felt to know that someone out there was paying attention to his struggle and acknowledging his hard work. So here's the music that Dvorak was inspired to write after winning the grant money. It's his piano quartet number 1, his first movement with the English piano quartet.